Okay, so in today's session, we are going to learn about how can we improve our reading skills. And there are certain techniques that you can employ in order to help yourself get better at the reading section. Now, before we begin the session, there's one thing that you need to keep in mind. If you are someone who is at the stage where you cannot really comprehend anything pertaining to grammar or the basics, then that means that you first have to really focus on at least understanding the bare minimum, which is like parts of speech, which is very basic. And then we can definitely delve into deeper how to read faster, what are the ways in which we can find sections, especially in the reading section, because reading section is one place where a lot of students struggle. It's because the answers, they do not come in order A. B, you have only 20 minutes per session or per section. And the other thing is that there's no, like, you cannot really expect the kind of questions. So it's very important that you know the basics first, and then you can use these techniques to hone your skills. Now, you already know that you have 3 sections and 60 minutes and 40 questions to answer. So if we roughly divide it, it means 20 minutes per section is what you should divide, and you should not give more time to any other, like any of the sections, because in this way, you will not be able to maintain the equilibrium. And of course, at the end, towards the end, it gets really annoying, and then to your chagrin, you would not be able to really complete the sessions or the sections. So it's very important that you know how to manage your time and also learn certain skills that will help you to, start reading easily. So now, coming to the first thing, these are some mistakes that a lot of test takers make. The first is reading every word. Now, the problem is that when you try to really read and understand each and every word, it becomes very difficult for you to really manage time. So, what we do is we always start with the skimming technique. Skimming is basically when you give it a rough read and you see, okay, fine, there are these terms, there are these numbers. So you have a hang of what all to expect in the passage, as opposed to if you start reading every word, taking your own sweet time to understand the passage. Of course, you don't really have that much time. So the first thing that you have to stop doing is to read every word, because n number of words are there and no amount of time would be would be enough for you to really understand it. So what you can do is, if you really want to understand a lot of text, so what you can do is you can start reading, inculcate this habit. Do not bound yourself to any time, but read in general, so that you understand what the text is and you develop the skill as well. The next one is not managing time properly. Spending too much time on one passage or question will definitely cost you your very precious time. So make sure that you're not spending more than 20 minutes per passage. The next is ignoring instructions. If you have not read the instructions carefully, at times in the instruction it's explicitly mentioned that you cannot write more than 2 words or a letter or a number, and you have not read it and you end up writing three letters or 3 words. Now, even if the answer is there, but you have added an extra word, it will be counted as an incorrect answer. So, not reading the instruction is a major problem, or a major mistakes that a lot of people make. So it's very important that you read the instructions as well. The next one is overlooking synonyms and paraphrases. See, no amount of no amount of time that I'll tell you that everything is going to be paraphrased. It's very imperative for you to understand and be terms with it, that everything in the passage will not be exactly in the question. So there's going to be a bit of synonyms, there's going to be paraphrasing, and sometimes you may not be able to find out the exact word in the passage. So do not get anxious, or do not start to feel confused that this passage does not have their word, because this is the whole pattern of the test, that you will be getting a lot of paraphrasing. So make sure that you are able to read between the lines, you are able to understand the word, even if it has been paraphrased. The next one is lack of focus on specific question types. So you know that IELTS do not really have any particular pattern, so you cannot really judge this is the kind of question that I can expect. It's going to be a culmination of different kinds of questions. So you can get fill in the blanks, you can get match the headings, match the information, match the sentence ending, complete certain things, or true false not given, or Yes, no, not given. So there's plethora of questions that you have to expect in the question. So make sure that you are practicing and you are well adept or at least well informed about all the questions, because on the day of the examination, if you get a question which is not familiar to what you've practiced, it's going to be a hazardous situation for you. So make sure that you practice a lot, and when you practice, you'll come across different kinds of questions, and this will definitely help you get used to any kind of question. The next one is missing the main idea. When we talk about the main idea, which is also called the central idea, this is a particular question type also called the matching heading. So if you do not understand the central idea of a particular paragraph, you will not be able to assign a heading to it. So understanding the central idea is another thing which is very important. The next is mismanagement of difficult questions. So sometimes what happens is you get stuck on one question. Now instead of moving forth, you would keep on you would keep struggling with finding the answers, and you will miss out on the time that you could use to find the other answers. So it's very important that if you get stuck somewhere, please just move forward, because because if you're stuck somewhere, your mind is definitely into this fight or flight position or flight or flight motion. But the problem is that if you don't get the answer, it confuses you even more. So if at all in the question or in the passage there is one question that is taking a lot of time, be smart, move on to the next one. As you know that there is no negative marking in the IELTS, you can always come back to that particular question later on and try to find out the answer. In this way, because you've moved on, you would be able to expose yourself to different things on the passage. Maybe while doing so, you get the answer which you were looking for. So always make sure that if there is a difficult question and you've tried your bit but you're not able to answer it, or you're not able to get the answer, always move forward. The next is neglecting to review answers. Once you are done with the questions, once you're done with all 40 questions, make sure that you come back to the answers to just proofread if for any punctuation errors, proofread for any, caps errors. Like for example, there was something that was a noun, but you wrote it in, like, let's say, small letters, so that would count as a negative answer as well. So make sure that you proofread after you're done with the section. And one thing more that you can focus on, or you can definitely practice, is when we talk about the listening section and the reading section, you can answer everything in caps on. So in capital letters you can give the answer. Better that you do this for the reading section, otherwise you have to maintain the grammatical rules. You have to maintain that if it is a name, you have to start with the capital letter. If it is something else, if it comes in between the sentences, then you have to start it with the lowercase. So to just not confuse you any further, you can just write everything in capital in the reading as well as the listening section. But for the writing section, you definitely need to follow the punctuation rules. So make sure that you do that. Now, coming to the challenges when it comes to reading passages, I don't really know where to begin with, because a lot of students face particular issues when it comes to the reading section. So the first problem or the challenge that a lot of test takers face is complex vocabulary and language. So the challenge is the passage often contains advanced vocabulary and complex sentence structures. If you are someone who has no information, if you are someone who cannot really understand anything in English, first thing for you would be to really get a hang over at least the grammar. And then you can start understanding the complex vocabulary, because the IELTS test is very standardized. It has all simple, complex, compound, all kinds of sentences. It will use synonyms. So if you are someone who's just beginning with English, do not go first for the IELTS, because then you will not be able to understand what is happening, and it's going to really confuse and break you down. So the better thing is that make sure that you have done a lot of mock tests. Make sure that you understand the contextual meaning of something, and then you start preparing for the IELTS. The next one is time management. Of course, it's like true for anything in IELTS, be it your listening, reading, writing, or speaking section. You need to manage your time in this way that you are able to locate the keywords and understand everything within a stipulated number of hours or minutes. So make sure that you are able to manage your time better. The next is identifying keywords. Every question has some or the other keywords. It's just for you to have that eye, for you to be able to find out the keywords. For example, every word will have one particular, every question, every sentence will have that one particular word that you cannot change. It could be a name, it could be a number, it could be a city, it could be any kind of numerical data. So these are questions that you can, or these are the terms that you can definitely expect in both the question as well as in the passage. So what you can do is always highlight such questions so that whenever you see that term, you know exactly where to come back. So that is very smart move that a lot of people do. It's called scanning. So once you, while you're skimming, mark every term or every keyword, and then when you start scanning, you can definitely start looking out for that word. The next one is inference questions. Inferences is when we make, or when we try to make an understanding of the question, and a lot of questions will require you to infer what is there. So you will not get the exact word. You will have to understand what the question is trying to ask you, and that you can do only when you know how to infer the questions. The next one is, a lot of people, they find paraphrasing and synonym a very big challenge, and this can be only dealt with if you expose yourself to a lot of reading materials, because no one can give you a list of words to expect from the IELTS. It always differs. So make sure when you read, when you come across any particular word that is new for you, you write it down, you search for the meaning, and then you make sure that you build the vocabulary as per the topics. The next one is dealing with multiple passages. As you already know that there are going to be three profound passage in the reading section, and every passage has its own unique style, own unique difficulty, own unique topic. So make sure that you are practicing enough so that when there is a variety of passage, you do not get confused. So these are certain things that you have to be very much aware of. And remember that each passage will have 13, and last May it will be 14 questions. So practice, and if you are getting tired in the middle, make sure you do not keep on taking breaks, because on the day of the test you will not really get any breaks. So practice, make sure that you familiarize yourself with all of this, and make sure that you are practicing as per the actual exam. So these are certain things that you have to keep in mind. Now coming to the technique, there are two kinds of reading techniques. The first one is an intensive reading technique, and the next one is an extensive reading technique. What are these? Let's understand. When we talk about intensive reading technique, it is the detailed understanding of a specific text. So when you are intensively reading, you're basically scanning, or you're trying to locate a particular word. That is called intensive reading. When we talk about extensive is very, very much similar to the skimming technique. That means you just get a general idea, you get the general gist, and then you start reading the questions again. When we talk about the intensive reading, it means that you are reading everything. You're reading from the beginning to the very end. It can be really easy if you are reading shorter, complex text, but if you're reading very long text, intensive reading does not come handy, because you have some time limitations as well. There we tell students to go for extensive reading, where you just read between the lines, you get a general gist, and then you start answering the questions. When we talk about intensive reading, our focus is to understand in depth. Our focus is to analyze the vocabulary, grammar, and understand the detailed meaning of every paragraph. But when we talk about the extensive reading, we just want to get an overall plot. We just want to understand the fluency. We just want to, get to terms with the language use, so that you have something to begin with. Now, when we talk about the intensive reading, the level of comprehension is very high, because you are paying attention to the detail and accuracies. But when we talk about the extensive reading, you just need to get an understanding of the whole gist. And then when we come to the vocabulary learning, when you do intensive reading, like when you are reading a novel, you come across a lot of vocabularies. If you are someone who believes in intensive reading, you would write down all the vocabularies, you would try to learn everything that comes your way. But if you're someone who's an extensive reader, you would just maybe read the cover page and get a general idea of the novel, and would never read the novel. So that is the difference between intensive as well as the extensive reading. If you ask me, what to follow in the reading section, I would suggest you to go for a mix of both intensive and extensive, because for questions like match the headings, you need to do intensive reading. Only then you can understand which paragraph would have a particular heading. But for any other question type, you begin with the extensive reading and then you go into the intensive reading. So these are certain ways, and it's very similar to skimming and scanning. And skimming and scanning is one technique that you will need throughout the reading passage. So, having said that, now when we talk about which approach to take, you definitely need to follow extensive reading, just like you read the newspaper. You just read it to get a general idea. And it's very important that you know that even if you are not understanding everything, that's completely fine, because again, you are under time constrictions, but the questions you should be able to comprehend pretty easily, and you should be able to you should be able to locate your answers in the keywords, or you should be able to locate the keywords in the passage, because that's exactly from where the questions are going to be taken. And once you found once you're able to find the passage statement, then you follow intensive reading to understand word by word meaning of the answer. So you go in general, give it a general read, find the keyword that is there in the question as well as in the passage. Once you find where the keyword is to that paragraph, you can read intensively. Okay, so this is the approach that you take. Do not go for intensive reading and then extensive, because it's going to take a lot of time, and who's got time? Not you, if you're giving the IELTS test. Now, when we talk about the faster reading skills with proven techniques for IELTS reading, the first is that you have to focus on group of words rather than individual words. For example, when we are reading, you should like chunk the information together. When you read word by word, reading becomes really fragmented. And when you read word by word, it's really good if you're reading a novel. But if you're reading a passage that requires you to answer certain questions, you need to go for chunk reading. For example, if you are practicing chunking, you will chunk certain words together. For example, the cat sat on the mat. If you are going word by word, you would read it as the cat sat on the mat. But the problem is that you do not have a lot of time. So what you can do is you can always chunk the words together, and if you want, you can definitely skip certain information that you find is not really relevant. So when you will skim, you will be able to tell which information is important, which information is where the answer is going to be taken from, and if not, just skip. And while you read, if there are certain phrases that comes around, you will definitely need to highlight them, because you will forget otherwise where did you read it. So what happens is, a lot of people, they do not highlight the text, so they remember that I read it somewhere, but they cannot really point out where did they actually read it. So the best thing is highlight the phrases so that you know exactly where a particular information has been taken from, and when that particular information is there in the question, you can always sync yourself back to the passage. So these are certain techniques that you can definitely try. Now, let me show you an example. Now, here is a passage. In recent years, there has been a significant increase in the number of people working remotely due to advancements in technology and changes in company policies. If you read word by word, this is the amount of time that you will have to give. However, if you read it in phrase, or if you chunk the words together, what you will do is you will read it like, in recent years, there has been a significant increase in the number of people working remotely due to the advancements in technology and changes in company policies. So you see, it's not taking as much time, and you are getting a general idea of what this passage is. It's talking about, the changes that the companies are undertaking due to advancement in technology. This is how you have to read in the reading section. Do not take your own sweet time to understand each word, because you do not have a lot of time. The next is avoid rereading. So the thing is that once you have read it, make sure that you have marked the keyword so that you don't have to read it like 10 times again. The question is, and the problem is that the questions, they do not follow an order. So sometimes you might find an answer in the last part, sometimes you might find the answer in the first part. What you need to do is, of course, you will have to read the text couple of times, like 2 to 3. But if you keep on forgetting where did you read a particular thing, keep on highlighting so that you don't have to keep on repeating it to come back to the passage. So you need to understand this concept. When we talk about rereading sections, it actually wastes a lot of time that could be spent in answering questions or understanding the new parts of the passage. When you keep on rereading, it actually disrupts your reading flow and makes it harder for you to retain information. And when you have to keep on reading back, it breaks your confidence because then you question yourself, "Oh, did I not understand it in the first time?" So when you are reading, keep on marking, highlighting, so that you have some information, you know where are particular text taken from the passage, and when you find it in the question, at least you know which paragraph to refer to. Now, there are again some strategies. As I told you, there is intensive reading, extensive reading, there's skimming and scanning. When we talk about skimming, skimming is basically getting a general gist of the passage. So you read through the passage to get a general idea about the content. You focus on the headings, on the subheadings, the first and the last sentences to get a general idea of the passage. Once you have skimmed through the passage, you know that, okay, fine, this is the content of the passage. Now you scan. In the question, you will have some particular words that you need to locate in the question. That is where you start scanning. You use that word, you find it in the passage, you read, then you start scanning for the passage. Then once you found it, skim it again so that you get the answer. The next is expanding vocabulary. It is exponentially important that you really expand your vocabulary when you're trying to understand the IELTS test. You can use a lot of apps. You can definitely use vocabulary list. You can use ChatGPT for this one because this technology is going to stay. So why not make use of it? The next is practice with timing. A lot of people, what they do is, if there are 3 passages, so I'm going to give myself 20 minutes and then I'm going to go for a 10-minute break and then I'll come back and then I'll do it again. With this, you will never be able to know exact what is your pace. So instead of practicing bit by bit, sit down, sit for 1 hour and see how much time do you take to complete a passage and see what are the areas where you're struggling the most, so that you have your weaknesses and strength and you know where exactly now you have to start working. Okay, the next one is active reading. A lot of people, they tell me, ma'am, when I start reading, I go here and there, I cannot focus on the text. What you can do is plug in earphones and read aloud. Because when you are passively reading, your mind can have a million of things to like think about, maybe your relationship status, maybe somebody who you really like, you will keep on thinking about them. But when you plug in the earphones and you start reading loudly, your brain automatically focuses on what you're reading. So that's one thing that you can do when reading. If you are someone who faces issues with concentration, plug in the earphones and read aloud. It will help you to, make your brain come back to the point. The next is predicting content. When you read the question, always look at what needs to be found. If you can really predict the content, you can always align yourself. The next one is improving comprehension. When you read, try to summarize the paragraph in your own words so that you know that you have an understanding of the main parts. So what you can do is, once you've read it, because you will get a pen and a paper, you can always write 2 to 3 words. This passage was talking about this thing. In this way, there are not a lot of passages, 6 to 7 passages, but if you read and you write it down, you have an idea of what information does a particular passage contain or what a particular paragraph contains, so that any question that comes, you know where to refer to. The next one is using practice test. Of course, when you're practicing, you need to practice from the source, from the authentic source. Do not practice from any other material but IELTS authentic materials, because that will give you a clear picture of the questions that you need to expect. It will give you a clear picture what are the strengths and the weaknesses. And of course, the more you practice, the more mock tests that you will practice from, the better clarity of thoughts, the better judgment you would have for your own self. So these are certain things that you have to keep in mind while reading. The next is reading variety of materials. You can read magazines, you can read newspapers, academic journals, and books. They will expose you to a lot of vocabulary. Write down those vocabularies and keep on learning them so that you don't forget them. The next is mind mapping and outlining. This one is something that I have not really found very helpful. But what happens is, a lot of people who are they're very adept when it comes to visualizing. What they do is they read the passage and they map it in their mind. Okay, this passage is from here, the passage contains this information. But if you are someone who's just beginning with reading, it will not really help you. So you can definitely skip it. The next is using online resources and apps. Nowadays, you have a lot of resources that you can refer to in order to build your vocabulary. And please do that. Please practice only from the IDP material, only from the British Council material, so that you know exactly how the standardized test is like, and you know where you lack. So these are certain things that you have to keep in mind. When it comes to IELTS reading section, I can definitely agree that it is a little confusing as well as it is really time taking. So what you have to do is, instead of going ham, give yourself some time. You can just try one thing before. So if you don't want to sit for a mock test in the very beginning, give yourself this time that you begin with the last paragraph, last passage. If you are not able to understand, then what you can do is read word by word. Take it, then you forget time constrictions. You read word by word, see if you're able to make sense of it. Once you develop the reading skills, then you start timing yourself, because timing yourself is very important in the IELTS. You will have to read everything within a stipulated number of time. So if you're not able to read within the divided time or within the given time, you definitely have to wriggle around. You will definitely have to see what can be done. Apart from that, make sure that you are exposing yourself to every question type, because there are roughly 17 kinds of questions that you can expect in the reading section. And if you miss out on any, you will definitely struggle when it comes to the actual test. So why do you have to put yourself through that much? Just practice from an authentic source, and you will be exposed to every material that there is. Apart from that, when you are practicing, make sure you are practicing all the techniques. You're practicing skimming, you're practicing scanning, you are practicing highlighting, because all of this in culmination will help you locate the answers. Apart from that, when it comes to the reading section, as I told you, if you move from first passage to the last passage, the difficulty level will definitely increase. So prepare your mind in such a way that you are okay with the difficulty level increasing. Apart from that, the best habit that you can inculcate is reading. The more you read, the easier you find these passages to be, because you have a habit of reading text, right? So when you develop reading skills, it not only helps you clear IELTS, it actually helps you to really build a very good vocabulary, and it helps you to express yourself clearly and better. So these are some skills that you can employ or you can use that will definitely help you get better at IELTS. If you have any question, any doubt, anything that did not make sense, you can ask me. I can see Vara here. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Did you understand what I told you? Is there any confusion that you have? Is there any doubt? You can ask me now. Also, if you have questions pertaining to any particular section of the IELTS, you can, okay, all right. If you have any questions related to any particular section of the IELTS, you can always book a free demo from us, and we are going to help you sort that particular thing out. You do not have to pay us anything. We will just help you with understanding that particular part of the IELTS. So with this, if you have no question, if you have no doubt, then we can definitely end the session. We can call it a day. Thank you so much for joining the session, and I will see you again tomorrow, same time. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Bye bye.
Bye.